You're going to be under arrest.
For what?
For not listening to me.
I think the emergency is the video, somebody's videotaping.
Okay. And the shirt says, I believe, balls deep. He says his name is Captain Awesome.
Yeah, what the heck? I might as well go first. Well, hi, George. Nice to meet you. One, I want to say I appreciate you for highlighting the one video on your channel, because I think it certainly helped get some exposure in my way and definitely views. So I certainly appreciate that. So my first question would be, can you explain to me your background, and then I'll get into a little bit on your channel and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not traditionally schooled. I dropped out in the 10th grade. I got my GED, and I only took a few classes for college, some A+ certification for computers and stuff like that. But I'm an avid reader, and I can read about 400 to 500 pages a day, a 24-hour period if I'm really interested in it. 200 to 300 if it's a little bit drier, like economics or history or law, stuff like that, where you got to pay a little bit more attention than what you're reading than the normal Stephen King novel. So I self-taught myself on a lot of stuff, and I've always been big on protecting our rights and how we move forward as a human species, rather than bickering back and forth amongst ourselves now. So I have a lot of questions for the government that they can never seem to get around to answering. And a couple years back, about 5 or 6 years ago, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I saw these guys on YouTube that were going around with cameras, and they were, asking questions and pulling records and, getting some information that I needed and that I wanted. So I decided to pick up a camera and start, going about this that way as well. And I had studied law as a hobby for a few years prior to jumping into what I'm doing now with the First Amendment stuff. So, it interested me. The case laws interested me. So I started doing that, reading that. And then when this came along, it helped me develop more of my First Amendment law, right to free speech, right to free press. So it's something I enjoy. I enjoy learning new stuff. So.
Well, I like to hear that. And you had mentioned about your avid book reading, and I was listening to my favorite author, David McCullough. He wrote 1776, John Adams. And he was saying that education ought never stop, and he's so true. It's so true, and too often that's to the heart of what you do. What you're highlighting in terms of law enforcement is the lack of education. A lot of times I don't, training is in policing, it's very structured. So I think it's more of a lack of retainment and a lack of betterment that to your point, to what you were talking about. So I'm curious, one, you blow me away with reading. I'm a reader as well. However, I don't know, it could be OCD. I don't read anywhere near your speed in terms of number of pages per day. What kind of books do you like to read?
When I was younger, I liked to read more of the novels and stuff. You got to excuse me. I'm looking out for my pizza delivery guy. The family's on vacation. But as a young guy, I used to read a lot of the more talented, or I guess you could say more popular authors. I read Stephen King, Kuntz, Robert Ludlum. I loved his spy novels. Same for Grissom. I read Louis L'Amour. I even read, a good portion of Danielle Steele's work, uh, you know, 20 years or so ago. But then as I got older, I started picking up things like economics, anthropology. I read a couple books on that. Just different stuff. Psychology. I started reading and watching a lot of stuff on, and of course, I collect old law and history books. So, um, I got a shelf full, um,
Nice.
and I like to read those as well. So, um, that's basically what I'm into now. A lot of stuff you can get PDF, on the computer. So you go to Google Books, and if it's over 100 years old, you could download it for free. So
Yeah.
I've gotten, quite a few good law books from that. I got Thomas Cooley's General Principles on Constitutional Law from like
Hmm.
1898, I believe. Really good book.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Um, had some really good insight into it. But yeah, that's basically what I like to read now.
No, and that certainly is at the core of what you've been doing with your channel. So you saw you had said that you observed that these people on YouTube were these auditors were I guess testing the police and certainly the response in police to these auditors is a lot of times is not good, and that's what was the trigger with Watch Nose that made you decide to start kind of taking on that as a vocation.
Um, I just realized that because of my unique situation, I was able to read and understand law. Because a lot of people, they read it, but they don't understand it. They don't get the legalese part of it. Where words can mean something different than what they think in the normal course of reading. So I was able to do that, and I knew that me being out there could help other people. Um, and I told my wife one day, I was like, "Look, this is what I want to do. I want to try it. I want to at least make a go of it." And I did. I went out there, and people enjoy my work, and I've been pretty successful overall with it. Um, so I'm happy with what I've done, and what could be in the future. But we've gotten rid of some dirty cops. We've gotten a lot of changes small like that. But I think the biggest change, the one that I'm the most proud of, is the amount of people that email me and say, "Hey, we watch your videos. We love what we see, and you helped us learn some of our rights."
Yeah,
Give me 1 second. My pizza guy's here. I'm gonna go grab the
sure.
pizza, and then I'll be right back in. All right, John. Sorry about that.
No, no problem. I was rushing around too. I got a little indigestion from grabbing 2 slices of pizza and driving home and trying to get ready for tonight. It
Well,
just
yeah,
didn't sit well with me. So,
yeah, and here I am grabbing pizza now, huh?
yeah, look, I still have it.
Interesting.
Here's the pizza cup. Still trying to sip the soda, but um, so with regards to your videos, what has been your most successful video?
I think my most successful video was a time when I was in Dothan, Alabama, and we had went there for the day. It was me and a buddy of mine, and we had walked around to quite a few of their public buildings. And in the morning, we had been handcuffed and detained in the Department of Human Health and Human Services building, and we were detained for about an hour before the sergeant ended up letting us go. And then we, continued around the town that day. And at the very end of the day, we're walking along the sidewalk right next to the police department, and they've got a little police training building behind there, and we're walking on a sidewalk there, and we hear, a siren, whir, and this guy pulls up behind us, and he's all like, "You guys need to stop." And turns out it was the sheriff of the county, and he had hopped out, and he said, "Well, we're detaining you guys because it's suspicious that you're going around recording our buildings." And so we ended up staying there for like 30 minutes. They unlawfully identified us. Dothan Police Department did. We were detained for quite a few, minutes, 25, 28 minutes altogether, just on the side of the road. So that one's probably my my most popular video that I've got on my channel. There was like, I don't know, 20 cops that ended up showing up, state police, city police, county sheriffs, and all for just, walking around videotaping. We didn't even go in any restricted areas. So
Wow.
really,
And when you get something like that, and now they obviously, I mean, 1 hour of being detained in cuffs, and then you're talking about later on that same day. What's your normal course of action? Is it a letter of complaint, and if so, what kind of response do you get? Are they receptive, responsive, or?
in most of my complaints, they've never been receptive. I've had one complaint that was actually upheld, and I've probably filed close to 100 complaints. So I don't take that method anymore. I have either a two-part method, and that is either a revisit. So I consider him like a puppy that needs to, see that he's gone potty on the carpet. You want to put his nose in it once or twice till he remembers, and that's the same way with the public official. You have to rub their nose in your rights a couple of times before this is this guy's rights. So, I've been back to places 2 or 3 times before they get the picture, and then they finally do, and everything's fine, and, we have a pleasant time and whatever else, have you not. I ask some questions and I leave, but I do that, and then sometimes if it's egregious enough, I'll file a lawsuit. So.
Yeah, it really amazes me. And on officers, there's this. It used to really frustrate me. I used to get in conversations with some troopers, and I used to get really frustrated on how ignorant they were, and I couldn't really articulate. They'd be arguing something that they have no idea about, and I don't know. From my perspective, I wouldn't hold firm if I wasn't 100% sure of something. So if
Right.
we're arguing about something and I wasn't 100% sure, I would sit there and go, "This is what I think it is." But again, I'm not 100% certain, so I'm not going to totally stand my ground on that. But when I know for a fact that I'm right, 2 + 2 is 4, I'm going to stand my ground. And they would be standing their ground, and they were wrong, and I knew. And you're trying to, and then I heard a quote, and it really helped. It resonated with me to understand the ignorance is with many people. They know enough about a subject to believe they are right, but not enough on that subject to realize they are wrong. And I think that's what happens with police officers. They learn enough about the job where they think they're right, but they don't know enough about it to realize that they are wrong. And also bad muscle memory. You do something over and over again, and no one corrects you, and next thing you know, you're thinking that's the right way to do it, and you just never been corrected. No, that's the wrong way to do it. Yeah. So when watching YouTubers like you and other people, it really caught my eye, and I was like, I couldn't believe how often it happens, and how these officers time and again, fall for it, and they just don't know any better.
Right.
And I do see that now you have, in addition to your channel, I guess it's a sub. I don't know. Maybe you can explain it to me more, because I don't. I'm still kind of new to this in terms of uh, kind of using YouTube as a steady type of activity rather than here and there like I've done with some of my interviews. But I see that you have some products that you sell as well. Um,
Yeah, you can, after you hit 10,000 subscribers, you can link your store. And so we just do like t-shirts and such like that with, phrases on them, um, that to, should espouse freedom. Some guys do whatever, but um, once you're on YouTube, you got 10,000 subscribers, then you could link the store. So that way your subscribers, if they want to support you and they just don't want to donate money, they could buy a shirt. I don't link a lot, but when I do, I have a link to my eBay store. So I have a couple of my subscribers that are always buying something off me on eBay, because they want to support the channel and they want to get something for it still. So it works out great. Um, so yeah. Um,
yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, that concept is new to someone like me that um, I watch YouTube, but I primarily watch it in the past music videos, educational video. I listen to it a lot in the car, YouTube. Um, to your point before about always learning and reading, and I just can't, and I travel a lot in the car. I just can't spend hours on end listening to music endlessly. I got to have something that I'm trying to learn about, whether it be research and writing, or whether it be some of my favorite authors, speaking. I like to listen to a lot of lecture series and so on and so forth. Um, and then I noticed that you hear about on the news, but YouTubers that are actually turned it into a business, and so kudos to you for that. Very successful business. So to me, I think that's very interesting and amazing at the same time.
it really is, because when I started, me and my wife were like, yeah, maybe we'll get a little bit of extra money off of it. And it came to be such that I was going out so often that I had to cut back on my regular job. And I do service industry, like server, bartender, assistant manager, that kind of stuff for restaurants. And I've been with my company for 17 years, coming on 18 years in a couple of days, actually. And so they were fine with me scaling back to like 1 or 2 days a month to work. And because I get, paid vacation through them and all kinds of benefits. I've been working with them. Um, that was really nice. But yeah, it took us by surprise, because well, when you're out there on the street, you hear certain things. You're like, oh yeah, that might be true. That might not be true. About corruption. And then, once you get into this, um, it it blows away whatever you thought you knew about corruption, right? Like everything I've ever heard was right, and then more. So it just and once you start like cultivating subscribers, they're in all walks of life, right? So I've got guys at the post office that tell me, about the post office when I go do audits there, and if they're getting memos about us, and the same thing with like health departments. There's nurses that work at the health department that watch my channel, and hey, I saw you were doing an audit at North Carolina Health Department. They sent out a memo about you. I get it as quick as the employees do, and
Yeah,
and once you're out there for a while and people know that you're serious about what you're doing, then you'll start getting the real tips about, hey, this officer did this or that, and or this city manager's doing this or that, and getting people to call you to start weeding out some of those bad apples. Um, because a lot of people that work um, aren't involved in a big conspiracy, and they're not out to like hurt and rob and maim people and stuff like that. They're just working a regular government job, but they have nowhere that they can go to report this stuff because they don't know if their boss is in on it, or department heads are in on it. I give you the Karen Reed case as a perfect example. I mean, there seems to be a whole bunch of people connected there that you might not have even guessed were connected. Proctor, the state trooper guy, connected to Brian and them and all that other stuff. But so it's really nice to be able to give people a way to reach out and tell us about this stuff without them having to worry about losing their job or being retaliated against. Because that's what's really kept us in the dark for so long is, people realize, hey, these guys will retaliate against me. I'll lose my job. I could be sued. We did a story about a year or so ago about one guy up in Indiana. They tried to frame him for, trying to sell the key to the girl's cell in the jail so they could go rape her. I mean, he was looking at some serious charges, and they had just set him up because he was the patsy guy, and finally my buddy covered it, then I covered it, and other people started covering it and looking into it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is definitely suspect.
Yeah,
So,
I don't understand how people go into a position of, I guess I kind of, I study history. What I'm saying, I'm in my mind, I'm going out. Corruption, power corrupts, right? So I just saying how people can go into a position of responsibility and then be corrupt at it, right? You would just think the opposite, that they'd be above board. But time and again, you get disappointed by human nature, I guess, with people.
that's what it is human nature. Stop, girl.
Yeah. Lack of discipline
Yeah.
and, peer pressure too, I think, sucks a lot of people into behavior that they wouldn't normally do, but because other people are doing it,
Right.
It's
Well, the same thing as, I got to get the country club membership, so I got to, keeping up with the Joneses, I believe they call it, where your neighbor comes home with a new car, and pretty soon you got to go out and buy a new car. You want to keep up impressions, and I mean, of course, it's human nature that everybody wants their family to do better, you know, um, financially as well as other stuff. So it makes sense that greed, envy, jealousy, all that stuff's there because they're people. Is what I like to say is that they're just people and they have all those emotions and all that other stuff, and we should know that, and we should be taking a deeper look before these guys started picking up cameras and going out auditing. I mean, I probably couldn't tell you, when the last time credit card records had been checked, and the mainstream news will do something here and there, but they're in their pocket. That's how they get all the exclusives, and we got folks we know and talk to that work for mainstream, so we know how it goes. You make sure you don't say nothing bad about the city or the chief of police, and you'll get exclusive interviews and blah blah blah. And so we understand how all that works. So, but we're a little bit different. We don't really care to get special treatment. We just want the truth. Um, so whatever way it takes us, and however long we have to question about it, seems fine to us.
100% agree. I believe you should. The one thing that they can't take away from you is your integrity, and too many people just don't really have it. To quote Thomas Jefferson, I used to use this all the time in the state police with the troopers. My troopers that used to be under my supervision. In matters of style, swim with the current. So if someone wants a certain certain thing done a certain way, and it's fine. It's just their way of doing it. Okay, you can do it. But a matters of principle, stand like a rock and go, no, I'm just not going to do that. It's a principle related thing. And to me, I think it's easy to do. For a lot of people, they have difficulty with standing by the principles. So I don't think a lot of people can really define what their principles are. And if you can't define what your principles are, you're certainly not going to stand by a set of principles because you don't really have them. You know, have a set. So kudos to what you do. I'm impressed by what you do. I know a lot of people with my background wouldn't be. But I don't. I again, it's another thing I used to have a hard time wrapping my head around. Why not? Like like IAB, internal affairs. Like, why would you not? Why would you be opposed to internal affairs? They should be doing. We should have internal affairs. So why would that bother you?
It just makes sense, John, because even when you work for the government, I know there's that rush of power, and I could do this or I can do that, and I'm buddies with the mayor, so things will always be good for me. And at the end of the your work history, when you go to retire, and then you find out that you're just another citizen. So all that stuff that you would do as a government worker is revisited on you as you get older. If you were in city council and you were voting to raise the taxes and voting to raise this and raise that to pay for all this stuff, and you were grifting money then, and then you go to retire and you move down here to Florida. This is based on a true story. You go to move down to Florida, and the county commissioners where you move to, which a lot of the old people live in the villages here in Central Florida, and a lot of them are old retired public service workers, and they had a committee meeting, a county meeting, where they were trying to raise the fire assessment fee astronomical amounts, and these people were all upset and hands over fists and pitchforks. And I said, what did you expect? That's the exact same stuff you did to your members of your community 20 years ago. So why would you think that it's not going to happen to you? So
Right.
if we keep an eye on government now, it benefits all of us, right? Not just because I like to tell people, I'm like, look, I'm not here to get a specific person, right? I'm not out to get any one person in trouble, but I am out to find out the truth and come about it that way. And again, like you said, that benefits everybody. It benefits me. It benefits the public worker down the line when they can actually pay his pension, instead of being like, oh, we have to cut your pension 20% because our investments didn't do so great, or there's a depopulation movement going on in town, and we lost 1,000 people over the last year, whatever have you not. People just think the good times are going to roll on forever.
No, and you know what? As you were saying that,
Which should be a red flag to them.
Well, yeah, and you had mentioned about the press being in the pocket of a lot of politicians, and now social media has created it's a paradigm shift in the press, which is good because it reverts to accountability, where now you got people that you really can't control because you don't have these large organizations. You have pockets of individuals that are, in essence, journalists and reporting these events and auditing to see if what is supposed to be being done, how cops are supposed to perform the job, so they're doing it that way. So it creates this new dynamic that you could see the difficulties that government and government officials are having with these new this new form of press. but it's a good thing. To your point, it's a good thing because it's going to, change is always slow, but it will present change because now you had mentioned about a letter going out that creates awareness to people. It also it also tampers down behavior that would not be appropriate. So it also helps in that way as well. So I think it's a good thing what you do and your colleagues as well.
Right, right. Well, we get, a lot of times we get a bad name just because some people don't want to act um, in the most polite manner, and I can understand that. And I tell people, I said, when it comes to exercising our rights, there is no handbook on how to exercise them. So if somebody's exercising their rights incorrectly or illegally, excuse me, then the police will deal with them. I don't have to worry about whether he's doing it legally or not. The police will handle that. But if he's doing it legally, no matter if I agree with how he's doing them or not, I still have to back him in his exercise of them. And I like to use Westboro Baptist Church as a perfect example. Nobody cared for what those people were saying, or a very large percentage of the population didn't care for what those people were saying, but yet everybody still recognized the importance of letting them say that, right? And not trying to shut them down. Um, so it's the same way with what we do. I can't imagine living under a government where, you were basically paying for everything. The citizens are paying for everything, and then not being able to ask questions about, you know, that wouldn't jive with me as far as somebody saying, "Oh, you live in America. That's a free country." And I'm going, I can't even ask my government what they spend my money on. How am I free?
Yeah.
So to me, the free press, the ability to watch over these guys is really the I guess you could say the foundational block of a free society. Because if you can't question them, then there's no way at all that you could be considered free in any way, shape, or form. You're pretty much doing what the government tells you. Can't ask any questions. That's the bottom line. I mean, I see no freedom in that. So, um, this to me is something that needs taught more. I don't know why, we're not taught, certain things in school. I mean, I have theories and all, but um, it doesn't make any sense to have all these cops out there creating this ruckus, not understanding people's rights. And I mean, cities are don't dedicating a good chunk of money every year to settle civil rights lawsuits. And like, it's in the billions countrywide. I think New York City alone puts aside like 50 to 60 million dollars for civil rights lawsuits every year. So it's not like they
Yeah.
don't realize that this stuff is coming, right? Like, you can't say that you put aside all this money for a tornado. You live in Tornado Alley, but yet then you're like, I didn't expect a tornado, right? So you're putting
Yeah.
aside all this money for civil rights violations. Civil rights violations has been happening every year, right? Because you keep using money every year, and yet you're like, maybe I should train these guys about civil rights.
Yeah.
So, it's like, what a leap of logic.
Well, in policing, training is definitely, you can't get enough training. And I used to, I did an exercise one time. There was a statewide exercise. I was with the New Jersey State Police, and we set this statewide exercise, and it came out over what we would call our teletype or computer system, and you could read each phase of it and how we were doing it. And what I did is, as each of those phases were going, I went through the steps with my guys on my squad. What would you do? What do you and just basically, it was a tabletop exercise for them, what to do. And after we were done, I think it was like a week-long exercise, so it was pretty good. Every morning for roll call, I'd go over it. And after it was done, I had one trooper say, "Oh, we should do this all the time." And I said to him, "You should do it all the time. Don't always be depending upon someone training you. Learn yourself. Have that thirst for learning and
That pride in your job, doing it better than anybody else because you know your job better than anybody else. I don't understand that. Like if I'm enforcing the law, I want to at least know what the law is that I'm enforcing.
you know what, yeah, 100% agree. I mean, I had what I'd call, he was a trooper one. He was a two-striper on my squad. Well, I'll leave him nameless. Nice guy. You know, when you have two stripes on, you've been on the job for at least 9.5 years in the New Jersey State Police. And he was clueless. He had no idea how to process an arrest. He knew nothing. And I said to him, I said, you know, when one of my guys comes in with an arrest and or he's on the side of the road, stop by, watch. And I knew I wasn't going to. There was no motivation, and I consider myself a pretty decent leader. There was nothing I was going to do to make this man, you know, to inspire this guy to go out there and you know, do his job. He just followed the radio calls. What if there, and he didn't learn anything along the way, which is hard to understand, but it is true. And you know, like I said, one day you're going to be a sergeant. Believe it or not, he's going to get promoted to sergeant, even though he doesn't know anything. And it's that cycle, because then you got a sergeant that doesn't know it, and this is the problem that I think all happens a lot with these orders when they're coming across these officers is they've had training. It went in one ear and out the other, but they've had training. It wasn't reinforced by them. They had no desire to, you know, to reinforce what training they received and expand upon it and learn and research. And it wasn't reinforced by supervisors, because either supervisors not very good at mentoring, and many fall short themselves in terms of being having a skill set that marries up with the position or their rank that they hold. So I think that the problem isn't as simple as training and education. It's supervision, training. It's a complex problem.
Right, because you can train all day, and if the person doesn't want to absorb it, it doesn't matter. That's like sending a drug addict to drug rehab. If they don't want to get off the drugs, you could send them there for 6 months, and when they come back out, they're just going to go looking for drugs. Right? They have to want. They have to want it. They have to want that change. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I had an incident one time. Just checking reports. It was an accident. No, it was a DWI report, and it was completed correctly, and it went down to, we have phases. Since we're state police, we have what we call troop headquarters. It goes to troop headquarters, and then it goes to division headquarters. Then it went to troop headquarters, where the traffic sergeant would look at it. He sign off on it, and he kicks the report back with a nasty note, like a little sticky. This report's incorrect. Change it here. And it gives me the block. And it was 100% correct. So I wrote, being the Irishman that I am, I wrote back, no, this is correct. And I put the sticky on it and sent it back to him. Now, this goes back to what I said before about, the problem is he knows enough about the job to think he's right, but not enough to realize that he's wrong. If you get a response from a staff sergeant back going no, and a strong response it was, you would think you'd pull out our SOP, standard operating procedure, and just clarify that you are right before sending another nasty note. But no, because they never referred to that, because if they did, they would have realized years ago, because now he's in a supervisor position checking reports, and he's taking reports that are correct and sending them back and requesting that they get filled out incorrectly. Figure that one out. But it's true. So then he sent it back. So I basically went over to the SOP, made a copy of the SOP, circled it, and said, "Read this." And I never heard from him again. So it is a problem. You got it's again, but that's what leaders do, right? Leaders inspire people. Right? Take someone where they, leaders take people from where they are to where they ought to be, and no one ever took that individual and built that person up, and that's a sad thing that they progressed that far. So it's a little bit more complex and complicated than that. But yeah, if you develop a good leadership model within your organization, it can be corrected. It's just now doing that across various police departments, through various municipalities, county agencies, state and federal, right? That's a big problem to fix.
Oh, it is. It is because, well, while there are police departments that are good and have good leadership, which I ran into, and I thank the chief for having that leadership. There's some where the leadership is just as worse than the officers on the street. There was a case in Margate recently where the chief was involved sending text messages to people within the department and sexually not explicit, but motivated, and just a whole host of nasty stuff. And that was after he took over from the last police chief. They used to have naked pool parties in order to get promoted, right? So you're like, and the guy they brought up from the chief having naked pool parties, they're like, oh yeah, give this guy a chance. What do you mean? He was with the chief at the pool party all these years. What do you mean? Like, so, and they found out, hey, they got what they deserved, and then a year later down the line, they got to get rid of this guy now because people are making allegations and threatening with lawsuits and stuff like that. So
no,
yeah,
it really is endless, and but like I said, kudos to what you're doing, and I'm done with my my portion. If there's anything you want to ask me or
yeah,
questions,
I do. Yeah, I do want to, and I was thinking because it's flowed so well, I was going to leave it together and not even have to cut anything out. I'm going to let
Right?
you run yours
Yeah.
first, though. So you can.
That sounds no, that sounds good. Right, I agree with you. It's going. The conversation is flowing nicely. I'm enjoying it, by the way, as well.
Well, thank you, John. I am enjoying it as well as also. It's nice to get out to do these things. That's educational and helping people that are watching move forward and us move forward with our thoughts and ideals.
Yeah, that's to your, the genesis for you getting involved in doing it was watching some of those videos, and the same thing, with me in terms of I can't envision myself as being an auditor, just for the pure fact that I can imagine myself getting handcuffed, and after being a trooper for so many years, I just don't want to get handcuffed.
Right.
But I was been watching these videos with the failure to give me an ID, and it's been driving me crazy to the point where I said, I'm going to go on and I'm going to do a video about just piss poor policing. It's just like, as you can tell if you're looking at some of my videos on my channel, I primarily started off as doing interviews. I'm an author. I'm a former law enforcement, so many of my interviews have been centered around the books I write. I write true crime books mostly, and so I'm either interviewing police officers that were involved in the cases or witnesses. Um, may have had conversations with some victims. That's a little bit more of a sensitive subject, so I try to, I don't want to victimize victims. But so
Right.
that's basically the purview that I've been going down with this. But then I said, I want to comment on it, on some of this bad policing. And I said, well, how does that kind of play with my channel? And not that I had much of a channel to begin with, but it was what I was building. And I went, well, you know what? A lot of these true crime cases, especially the real complicated ones, remember Hogan's Heroes, the star Bob Crane, star of
Yeah.
Hogan's Heroes. Remember that show? He was
Mhm.
murdered. These sleepy town communities where major crimes happen, these cases very rarely get solved. And if they do, it's not easy to get a conviction because the police have no idea how to do an investigation. And they just mess it up. They contaminate the crime scene, contaminate evidence. They don't process evidence correctly. And so that's what I said. You know what? If you can't conduct a suspicious call, to your point when you were out there, they said people acting suspiciously. If you can't conduct a basic suspicious person call and know the steps in order to make that query to see if that person is acting suspiciously or what they are doing, or did they just commit a crime, or are they about to commit a crime? If you can't handle that, the basic of basics, what are you going to do with a more complicated investigation? So that was kind of like why I started commenting. So it kind of like integrated my research, my writing, with being able to provide some commentary on bad policing, and that's how I discovered the auditors and some of the just really incompetent and corrupt policing that's out there right now. So
Yeah, that's to your point. That's one of the things that intrigued me the most when I was watching before I began was just a complete lack of basic knowledge, like the ID law. So to me, I equate knowing the ID law like a carpenter would know what a level is, or a bartender would know what a rum and coke is. Like it's the one of the basic tools that you have in your tool bag that you use probably every day. I would imagine IDing identification of somebody comes into play just about every day of an officer's career. So it's a lot different than, say, a regulation that says you can't mail upside down on Sunday or something. You know what I mean? Like this ID law. This is something that my whole career is based around. And I should at least know that. And I could say in the majority of videos that I put out, they couldn't quote even the statute number, much less what the statute said. There's a prevailing myth out there that if an officer asks you for ID, you must hand over that ID. And I caught the phenomenon. It's like Bigfoot. I've caught the phenomenon on video numerous times. Where they, and there's no hesitation. Like you said, they, know enough, but they don't know enough. But I'm literally no hesitation. Yes, sir. When an officer asks for your ID, you got to provide it.
yeah.
And it's like, well, what about, what if he doesn't have an ID? What if he never got a driver's license or a state identification card? Is he going to jail just because he never got the state approved ID? Of course not. You can ask his name and his date of birth.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, you got a good point there, because when I used to, and I think training on a daily basis is very important. I used to take the opportunity to do roll call, and believe it or not, roll call I think is a very important tool for educating your men under you, and women under you, because it provides you with 15, 20 minutes of a quick discussion and pick the discussion, whether it be Miranda or Terry, to discuss something or go over an arrest that one of the troopers had, and kind of do a debriefing on it and what was done right, what was done wrong. So it's a good opportunity for lessons learned and educate your troopers. Very few people did it. I was only at one station in my whole career where roll call was every shift, and that was the Newark State Police Station, and it was depending upon. It would be sometimes there would be an educational component to it. Other times it would just be some briefing stuff. Still very important, but all other stations, roll call was something that no one really did. You wrote it down and said you did it, but you
Right.
didn't do it. And you had mentioned about being, carpentry 101. And I actually, it's funny that you said that, because I used to use this in one of my training lessons with the troopers. Miranda, for example, the basics of Miranda, understanding that. And if you don't understand the basics of Miranda and you violate someone's rights, and it's 101. You learned it when if you didn't get a criminal justice degree, you learned it in the academy. The basics of Miranda, what triggers Miranda in a nutshell. If you're not free to go, they have to be Mirandized. Now, it's a Miranda violation. You're a jury. A jury is listening to the case, and you're going to go with 12 years on, like that Trooper 1 I told you about. Right? You got stripes on your arm, been on a job for 12 years, and you're going to go, well, I just didn't know. I thought I could do that, but I didn't realize I couldn't. A jury is comprised of different people: plumbers, electricians, carpenters, as you said. They're going to equate that to, well, wait a second. I learned how to do the basic, cut, if I'm a carpenter, the basic angles on how to use a saw, like first 6 months on the job. And this is really basic, police
work.
101. And you don't know that with 12 years on. And it's true. A lot of people, they don't know it. They're not lying. But a jury's going to go, no. You're lying. You knew that, and you just did it anyway, and you violated that person's right. And you can't blame people for thinking that, because it's hard to wrap your head around someone with 12 years experience not knowing the basics. But I can assure you there are many out there that are like that. I was working, I was a sergeant at the, I'll leave the station nameless. And we had an intern in there, and I felt bad for some of these interns. Depending upon the squad, a lot of people would just have them answering phones. They're there to learn, right? You want to educate them. So, and we rotated. I was rotating shifts. And so I'm sitting there with the intern, and he asked me, ironically, a question about Miranda. What triggers Miranda? And I answered. He goes, "Oh, wow, you sure?" I went, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Oh, I asked the other three, it was 4 squad sergeants. I asked the other 3 squad sergeants. They didn't know the answer. And I asked the detective sergeant. He seemed pretty sure of the answer, but he said he'll get back to me. And may God strike me dead, I said to him, the first trooper that walks through the door, if he's one of my guys, ask him that question, and he will be able to answer it." Sure enough, 20 minutes later, a trooper walks through the door. It's one of mine, and he asked him the question, and he actually got kind of insulted because it was so basic. He's like, "Of course I know that answer," and he answered, and the intern was shocked. It is shocking from an outsider perspective, but it's a sad statement to an insider, but it's not shocking. So I think that's what a lot of people that are not in policing, sometimes there are clear, obvious corrupt behavior. And sometimes I would call, sometimes it would be soft corruption, like, transferring someone to a different station because they are doing their job and they're just not going to listen to you to not do their job. That's soft corruption. You're abusing your power. Some people say, well, it's corruption. It is. But it's a softer form of corruption. It's not the traditional corruption that you would think of, stealing stuff, but it does certainly. It's that slippery slope. It's certainly going to lead to that if that behavior is not changed. But it happens so often. There are just so many people that are not familiar with their job that it's hard to wrap your head around it. That you just think, oh no, that he did that on purpose, because there's no way, he just didn't know. I do think a lot of times these people think they can. They just and then of course there's the abuse part to it, because now they think they have this authority, and now you are questioning that authority, and then they push back. That's a whole problem in and of itself.
It is, because that's the main topic, is when they come there to see what I'm doing. They either ask for ID right off the bat, or they tell me that I gotta leave. I'm not allowed to be there, and I'm like, yes, I'm allowed to be here. It's not a private business. They can't just trespass me because they don't like the color of my hat. I actually had a cop tell me that one time, that they could trespass me off a county building because they didn't like the color of my hat. I'm like, how would we ever watch government if that was the case, right? Like, all the mayor has to do is says he doesn't like you, and now you're banned from City Hall forever. And it's weird, their thoughts on that kind of stuff. But you're right, it's almost like beat into them, just like this myth of you need permission to record people in public. They're always like, I don't give you consent. And I'm like, don't you see the cameras around you every day? Like at the ATM, at the traffic light, your neighbor's ring doorbell, your next door neighbor's dash cam every day. He drives you, he drives home. He's catching you out there playing with your dog. Like we're on video so many times a day, and none of those people have asked you for your consent. Like, I don't understand how it doesn't, sink in.
A lot of people are really not well versed on a lot of things. Let's face it. I mean, that's why politicians on the right and politicians on the left, right? They use these sound bites, and it's a sound bite. And I was in New York City doing a training session, and I just did a training session on inductive versus deductive reasoning. And they use these sound bites because most people use inductive reasoning. They just draw, they say an observation and a general, familiar pattern, and based on that pattern recognition, they draw a quick conclusion, which, with using deductive reasoning, now that becomes the hypothesis, because that might be right, but it might not be. But they are so used to doing that, inducing things, that that's it. They're right. They know that's it. It's done. I'm right.
Locked on the target.
Correct. And that's why, and most people and those sound bites, even though it's a small little sound bite, and the sound bite itself is a fact, but in the bigger context, the context of the statement, it could be construed a different way. In context, it's not what you were trying to lead it, but people just get into these little things. So now, to your point, you have regular citizens that are going to be calling in suspicious. The old say something, see something, but they don't. You want people to report something suspicious, but it seems like things that are not suspicious, like someone videotaping, out there, obviously videotaping, especially with equipment, is not, a terrorist, because a terrorist is going to be trying to do it, at least trying to hide what they are doing. And then the suspicious activity, they're not reporting, right? Because you see it all the time with active shooters and stuff like that. It happens, and they go, oh, wow, yeah, Jimmy, yeah, he was acting suspicious, and Jimmy, did make a couple threatening statements, and we just thought it was not. but yet you're not reporting that. But the guy out there with the video camera, he's the suspect, right? And then
Right. Send 10 cars.
sometimes, and then the cop takes that like, okay, it's not, it's not Columbo who's calling in a suspicious person. Then they'd be like, okay, maybe it is suspicious because it's Columbo calling in, and I'm probably dating myself with Columbo. But just because someone classifies an activity as suspicious doesn't necessarily mean it is. And that's to my point before about how about, you're going to a suspicious call, drive up, take a position from a distance, a line of sight where you can see what activity's taking place, make an assessment yourself. What is that person doing? Right? And watch for a couple minutes, make a determination from there, and then approach. And then does the demeanor change? Are they cooperating, or are they not cooperating? Are they not cooperating because they are nervous and they had just committed a crime, or you stopped them from committing a crime? Or are they not cooperating because they're just invoking their constitutional rights, or busting your chops because they want to push you? Because some auditors are agitators, and to your point before, you said you can't fault them against their rights. You want to. It's like a pen test, like we do in security. You want to try to, you put security in place, you train, you educate the staff, and then you test them. Try to sneak in, try to use some social engineering techniques to see if they buy it, and if you can make entry into the building. And then if you do, now you got some specific areas that you can build upon and train upon, and it's a way of testing. Are they learning it, or are they practicing it? Right, practice what you learn. Right. Same thing with you auditors. I think it's a good thing because you're actually testing the police and the response, whether you're agitating them or you're being cooperative, and a combination of both. It's good to see how they respond. Do they respond effectively?
Right. Yeah, I like to say that even buttholes have rights, so even people that you're like, oh man, that guy's insufferable, I don't care for him at all, he still has the same rights that everybody else does. So regardless if the guy's winning popularity contests, should not decide whether he has the right to speech, or the right to vote, or whatever else, right to free press, whatever comes up that way. So
100% agree, and let's hope that some. I do know I've seen some auditor videos where the police are like, "Yeah, I know who you are. I know exactly what you're doing, and I'll educate the complainant exactly what you're doing, and keep it up." Actually, some people I enjoy your channel. So these videos that are out there can be used educationally if the police were to watch them and observe and learn. I mean, I posted one video. I think you may have commented on it, it's with the African American veteran who was arrested. It was a wellness check.
Well, yeah,
I've had some police officers comment on there like, "Well, they've done the cops did nothing wrong." Now that one, it shows that they're not even, let's try to be polite here. They're not even informed enough to realize that even if they think that those police officers did nothing wrong, at least don't put it in a comment. You could be smart enough to at least not comment that.
right.
Memorialize that, because I don't see how anyone with any training whatsoever could say that those officers, performed their task effectively. They were performing a wellness check and trying to see if this person was, okay. Let's check on that person's well-being, and they did nothing other than agitate them. And so how are we saying that they did nothing wrong?
Right.
It's powerful, and there are. There's an uncomfortable amount of police officers out there that actually believe that, and so they're not really learning from other people's mistakes.
Right. Which is why we need people out there, on the street, correcting behavior like that, so they know, um, and hopefully, it starts to put a curb in it, and you know, because I tell you one thing, one of the funniest things, we're a little bit over an hour. I'll let you go here. I know time's valuable, but I got to tell you, we were in South Carolina one time, me and my buddy, Upstate SC News, and I can't remember where in South Carolina we were, but we went into this health department, and the ladies there, they freaked out as always, and they called the cops. And so while we're sitting there waiting on the cops, and we were sitting right there in the front office, these cops come walking in, and I swear that I've never seen cops so quiet in my life. And they just stood there and didn't really say much of anything. And while they were there, I re-explained to her everything that was going on and my right to be in the public. And, if you've got private stuff, you need to hide that, or, not leave it where anybody could see it, and that kind of stuff. And she looked over at the cops, and the cops were like, "Oh no, he said everything he said's right." So I was like, "Man, these guys were pretty docile this visit." And we had went outside, and we were videoing their cars, getting the plate numbers and all the identifying marks. And my buddy, he calls me over and says, "Hey, you got to come see this." And I went over there, and sure enough, on his screen, they were doing interterminal messages back and forth, and it had a message on there that said, "Oh my gosh, those are the First Amendment auditors. You better keep it clean, or you'll end up on YouTube forever," it said. And if you were to watch the video, you swear these were the nicest cops you ever seen. Didn't say nothing. They didn't say, "Let me see your ID. You're not supposed to be here." Nothing. They smile. I'm surprised they didn't bring in cookies, because I always say I love cookies. Like it was really interesting, to say the least.
And you got to say at least kudos to them. At least they were informed that people are doing these type of checks and on them. So
That's right.
right.
That's right.
So
yeah,
but
because it's silly. It's silly. Just ignore
really
us.
is. It really is. It's just. But anyway, I've enjoyed the conversation. I mean, it flowed nicely, and it went quickly, and you're right. I just looked; it's over an hour. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I'm at the age now. I got to use my glasses to see.
Yeah, I'm not far off with all this computer stuff. My eyes make it blurry now, so
yeah,
I'm gonna be heading for Glassland soon.
And just one last question I have for you, George.
Yeah.
Majorly Awesome. Where'd you come up with that screen name?
Well, first I came up with Captain Awesome, and
you promoted yourself.
Yeah, and I got a little story behind it, and I say that my cousin Bartholomew was in the French Foreign Legion, and I wrote him and his fellows a letter that was so inspiring that they decided to give me the honorary title of Major in the French Foreign Legion. So
nice.
now I'm Majorly Awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, I started as Captain Awesome. I didn't realize there was a child's book series that had a Captain Awesome in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so then I switched to Major, so that way I wouldn't get sued for trying to use the likeness or whatever, or you know, anything to do with that, because I was selling T-shirts that had Captain Awesome on it, and
yeah, you're right.
I wanted to be as safe as possible, so I was like, you know what, it's time for a promotion.
There you go.
So so yeah, people like it. They get a kick out of it. It's a snicker, you know. I want to be I don't want to say entertaining, but I don't want to be boring when I'm doing my stuff. But I also don't want to be, you know, an idiot either, or an inconvenience. You know, people are doing their jobs and they're going about it the right way. I want to showcase that and you know, give them props for that. But yeah, when they're definitely bad, I definitely want to expose that and let